Welcome back to the Company Show, where we tell like it is and we do not care how you feel. And we have another 2026 schedule preview and breakdown video to get to today. I've already done a handful, done most of the other SEC teams. So if you are curious and checking those out, go to my channel. They are there. But today we got the Kentucky Wildcats. How did they do last season? Well, they went 5-7 overall, 2-6 in the SEC. They lost to Ole Miss, South Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Vandy. They somehow found a way to beat Florida 38-7. That's mind-blowing. They did go on the road to beat Auburn 10-3 in a very close, no offense kind of game. But they did fire their head coach, Mark Stoops. They did bring in new head coach, Will Stein. He was the former offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for the Oregon Ducks. He actually did play quarterback for Louisville Cardinals, which is kind of ironic because that is Kentucky's biggest rival. So they do bring in a new head coach. They fired Mark Stoops in December last year after a very brutal 41-0 loss against Louisville. And look, I think it was I thought it was time for this mutual separation. Obviously, Mark Stoops got fired, but I thought it was time that they both went their separate ways. I thought it was time that Mark Stoops moved on from Kentucky and Kentucky moved on from Mark Stoops. Towards the end of his tenure there at Kentucky, it seemed like there was a lot of tensions between Mark Stoops and the administration there. And you would find him going on like radio shows, podcasts, and he would just say some kind of like offhanded comment where it didn't really seem like the unity was there. The relationship was really good. There seemed like there was a lot of tension. So I think it's for best that Kentucky moved on and that also Mark Stoops moved on. At the end of the day, I think Mark Stoops did everything that he could for this Kentucky Wildcat football team and this administration and this program. After all, he was the winningest head coach in Kentucky football history. He, depending on who you asked, he either went 72-80 or 82-80. And if you ask me, he went 82-80. This whole NCAA vacating wins for the 2021 season is stupid. Look, we all watched the games. We can all go back and look at the games, look at the score. We know who won. Kentucky won the damn games. He went 82-80. He had 2 10-win seasons. So I think that's absolutely stupid, that whole 2021 fiasco where they had 10 wins vacated because they did. They had some players receive benefits from work that they didn't do, that they agreed to do. I guess they agreed to do work. I'm not sure what it exactly was. I'm sure you can look it up and find out. But I remember they had some players agree to do work for payment, to get paid. They didn't do that work, but they still received the payment. So NCAA went in and vacated all their wins for the 2021 season. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It is so ridiculously dumb that this is one of the reasons why the NCAA has such a hard time having control over college football. This is one of the reasons why college football does not have an actual legitimate governing body. Nobody takes the NCAA seriously anymore. They're a laughingstock. They're a joke because for what seems like forever, they have made the stupidest decisions that I can think of, and this is being one of them. This was during the NIL period. Players were getting paid. It was legal to pay players. And because they didn't do some work that they agreed to do but still received payment, even though the people paying them agreed to pay them, you vacate their wins. Stupid. That's a rant for a different video when it comes to the NCAA. But if you ask me, Kentucky fans and the rest of NCAA, he went 82-80. Those wins should not be vacated. They weren't cheating. They didn't steal a playbook, the playbook from another team, Michigan. But either way, I've gone on enough of a rant. I'll probably make a video about the NCAA coming up in a few weeks at how dumb they are. But either way, Mark Stoops, the winningest head football coach in Kentucky. He did great things for the program, but I do think it was best that they both parted ways. So now you've got Will Stein coming in as head coach. And this is a very heavy roster overhaul this year. 45 new players, 31 incoming players from the transfer portal. So a lot of new faces. You do bring in a new quarterback, Kenny Minchey. I think is how you pronounce his last name, Minchey, Minchey. Transfer from Notre Dame. He was the backup to C.J. Carr there at Notre Dame. He's a 4-star out of Tennessee. And he didn't play much at Notre Dame. Like I said, he was the backup. You know, in 2025, he only had 26 attempts all season long, so he played in a lot of garbage time football. So he is about as new as they come. He does have some experience. He does have some game time experience, but he is still brand new. And he's coming from Notre Dame. And we all know what the Notre Dame schedule looks like. It's a joke and a half. Joke and a half, Notre Dame. He's coming to the big boys. He's coming to the SEC. On a team that's usually not a powerhouse in the SEC. It's going to be different for Kenny Minchey. But new quarterback coming in, I do think he'll get the start. I'm very curious to see how he's going to do. You also have a new running back in from the transfer portal who I do think is going to be a key contributor to this offense in C.J. Baxter. He transferred from Texas, and look, he dealt with a bunch of injuries at Texas. Unfortunate. I really did like him in his freshman year going to Texas. I thought he was going to be really good, but he just dealt with too many injuries. 2023, coming out of 2023 into 2024, he tore his knee. He was out all of the 2024 season, didn't play a single snap in 2024. However, he did make his return in 2025, where he still had some lingering hamstring issues from his injury, so it really limited his play time and his progress with his rehab and his recovery. So just plagued by injuries. But if you look at his numbers when he did play in 2023, he had a decent year. 138 carries with 659 yards. That averages to about 4 yards per carry. Hey, if you're picking up 4 yards every time you hand the ball off, you're getting a first down every time. So 3 of those, first down. 2025, where he was limited, he did have 54 carries for 196 yards. So not great numbers, but very decent numbers. I'm curious to see if he's going to be 100% healthy for this Kentucky Wildcat team, because I do think they do need a solid running back there. You do bring back tight end Willie Rodriguez. He had a good season last year in his sophomore year. I think he's going to be a key contributor for this offense and this Wildcat scheme under Will Stein. I am curious to see what this offense is going to do with so many new faces. Will Stein is an offensive guy, and he's got a lot of turnover. I mean, he's doing exactly what you would expect a new coach to do when they come into a program, especially if it's not an already loaded program. It's one thing to take over a program like, let's say, LSU with Lane Kiffin. You know, you've already got the talent there. Lane Kiffin does rely on the transfer portal a lot, but you've already got the talent in place at LSU. A place like Kentucky, you don't really. So you got to transfer portal. You got to transfer these kids in from the portal. So I'm curious to see what his offense is going to look like. Given that this is a first year, a lot of new faces, very curious to see what that is. So what are my questions for this Kentucky Wildcat team going into the 2026 season? We already touched on one. It's what is this offense for Will Stein going to look like? He is an offensive-minded guy. So you would hope, if you're a Kentucky fan, that you can count on this Wildcat offense being consistently good year in and year out. You take Kirby Smart for my Georgia Bulldogs. He's a defensive-minded guy. The best defensive-minded guy in the game right now. One of the best to ever do it. The man knows defense. You can count that on a year in and year out basis that he is going to have a very solid elite defense. Even when his defense takes a step back, they're still top 5, top 10 defense in the country. Can this Kentucky Wildcat offense under Will Stein get to that level? I don't think they're going to become some elite powerhouse offense where they're in the top 5 every year, but he is an offensive-minded guy. Can you be able to consistently rely that, hey, you know what, our defense not be the best, but we're going to be able to go out and put 30, 40 points up on anybody that we play? Can he get this Kentucky Wildcat team to there? I think it's a possibility. So that is my biggest question is what is this offense going to look like under year one with Will Stein with all the new faces? Second question, can we get any administration buy-in to this program? That is one of the biggest things when it comes to succeeding in college football is having the right administration buy-in into the program. If you don't have any administration buy-in, you can forget about it. And it seems like for so long that Kentucky never really had that with the football program. Yes, they would have a few years where they would go 10-2. Mark Stoops had 2 of those seasons, but it always just seemed like Kentucky was content going 6-6, 4-8, 5-7 on, having a pop-off year every 10 to 15 years where they go 9-3. They bring in a new head coach. So they make one step closer to getting true buy-in. And obviously, anytime you have a new head coach, whether it's at the college level or the professional level, when you have a new head coach, especially when the last head coach was fired due to poor performance, there's going to be a lot of optimism and a lot of buy-in from the fans. Can they get serious about football up there in Kentucky going into the next season? Now, that's not something we're going to really be able to see this year. We'll get a better idea if there is actual administration buy-in in the next few years, but it should have started day one. So can this new era for Kentucky Wildcat football actually have administration buy-in? That's my second question going into the season. And my third question is, can Will Stein get a signature win against one of his rivals? Those rivals being Tennessee, Florida, and Louisville. Can he get a win against one of those teams? We'll find out. Let's jump to the schedule. What I'm going to do is run through the schedule, give you who they're playing. Once I run through that, I'll give my takeaways from the schedule, and then I'll jump to my prediction. So, Kentucky starts things out on September 5th against Youngstown State. You'll get a win there. Not worried. After that, you do have an immediate tough game. You are staying home September 12th to take on Alabama. Then you got to go on the road on September 19th to take on Texas A&M. And then after that, you are back home on September 26th to take on South Alabama. After South Alabama, you go on the road first weekend of October the 3rd to take on South Carolina. And then back home on October 10th to take on LSU, and then back on the road on the 17th of October to take on Oklahoma, and then on October 24th, you are back home to take on Vandy. After that Vandy game there on Halloween the 31st, you do have a bye week. Coming out of that bye week, you got to go on the road to take on Tennessee on November 7th. November 14th, you're back home to take on the Gators. And then you go on the road on November 21st to take on Mizzou. And then, as always, to finish out your regular season, you are back home on November 28th to take on your rival, Louisville. So, that's the schedule. What are my takeaways? This is a difficult schedule. This is a tough schedule. Now, any schedule for Kentucky where they're playing an SEC schedule is going to be tough because of who Kentucky is. No disrespect, but it's just true. It's going to be difficult. You do miss out on Georgia and Texas, but you got to play Alabama. You got to go on the road to take on Texas A&M, LSU, on the road at Oklahoma, on the road at Tennessee. You got to play Vandy. You got to go on the road to take on South Carolina. And I don't think South Carolina's that great, but that's a tough place to play. This is a difficult schedule. So all I can say is good luck. Second takeaway is you have a very late bye week. Your bye week doesn't come until week 9 of the season. Now, it is before your big rival game against Tennessee, so at least you have that extra week to prepare for Tennessee, and it is a road game, so it's very good that you do have that bye week there, but Tennessee also has a bye week there. So, very late bye week. Can Kentucky go 3-5 before the? It's very likely that Kentucky is 2-6 going into their bye week. Can they go 3-5 before their bye week and make some magic happen coming out of their bye week to go 6-6? It's going to be difficult. Very late bye week. And my third takeaway from the schedule is that your 3 biggest rivals, I already talked about them earlier in this video, Tennessee, Florida, and Louisville. They are all within a 4-week span and at the end of the season. At the end of the season, within 4 weeks, you have to play your 3 biggest rivals. One of those being on the road. You do get 2 of them at home. You go on the road to take on Tennessee. You do get Florida at home, and sandwiched between that Florida and Louisville game is an on-the-road game against Mizzou, and you are back home to take on Louisville. Can you go 1-3 in those games? If you're Will Stein, I think you need to. I really do think you need to. I think one of my ways that I determine if a new head coach was successful in his first year season is if he can get a win against one of his rivals. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It does matter if you're competing for national championships. Everyone wants to win. But when you're a team like Kentucky and you know you're not going to make the playoffs, even if you make the playoffs, it doesn't matter what sport you're in. If it's football, baseball, hockey, I'm assuming basketball. I don't watch much basketball, but you want to beat your rivals. You want to have those bragging rights. Because if you can beat your rivals, man, does it feel good. You have those bragging rights for a full year, and you can really stick it to your rivals and say, you know what? I don't care. We beat y'all. Can Will Stein get a win against one of his rivals? If he can, even if he gets a win against one of them, I think that's a successful season. First-year head coach. So what's the floor for this Kentucky team? Well, the floor is 2-10. I think that this is such a rebuilding year with so much new. We don't really know how Will Stein is going to be. I think that the absolute floor for this team is 2-10. I think even on your worst days, you get a win against Youngstown State and also South Alabama. But it's very possible that you could lose every other one of your games. What's the ceiling for this Kentucky team? 7-5. I think you legitimately could get a win against both of those teams, Youngstown State, South Alabama. I think you can beat South Carolina. I think you can beat Vandy. I think you can beat Florida, Mizzou, and Louisville, and even Tennessee. So I think the ceiling for this team is 7-5. What is my prediction? Well, I've got you beating Youngstown State. I got you beating South Alabama. I think you beat Vandy. I've already made a Vandy video. I am not high on them. I think they take a huge step back. I think you get a win against them. I think you get a win against Mizzou. I have never been and will never be high on Mizzou. I think you go on the road and beat Mizzou. So that leaves, I think you lose to Alabama. I think you lose to South Carolina. I think you lose to South Carolina on the road. I think you lose to LSU, Oklahoma. So I think you go into your bye week sitting at 3-5. I think you go into your bye week sitting at 3-5. You got 4 games left. I got you beat Mizzou. I think you got 4 wins there. That leaves your 3 rivals. On the road at Tennessee, against Florida, and against Louisville. On the road at Tennessee, you do have that bye week before, but so does Tennessee. I think it's possible that you can go on the road to beat Tennessee, especially considering that Tennessee doesn't have a starting quarterback yet. Obviously, we've got fall camp coming up. They will name a starter, but they have not named a starter. And if Tennessee doesn't get things figured out on offense, you very well could go up there and win. But I think you lose. I really like Josh Heupel. He gets this team ready every week. They're playing at so much more of an elite level than what they were. I think you go on the road and lose to Tennessee. That leaves Florida and Louisville. And I touched base earlier about how I feel that if a new head coach is successful, one of the things that I've determined if he's successful is if he can get a win against his rival. Florida and Louisville. Now, I went back and forth on this. Florida has had Kentucky's number for what seems like forever. It didn't matter how bad Florida was and how good Kentucky was. It seemed like Florida always found a way to beat Kentucky. Except for these last few seasons. Kentucky has gotten a few wins, and it seems like that is kind of reversed to where Kentucky kind of has Florida's number now. Both of these teams are the same. New head coach, a lot of turnover, figuring things out. I think Will Stein gets his signature win. I think he gets a win against Florida at home. He's going to have the fan base rocking. I think Kentucky beats Florida this season. I think it's going to be a very close game, a very good game. But I think Will Stein gets a huge win against Florida in his first year, getting a signature win. I got you beat Mizzou, but I've got you losing to Louisville. Look, I think this is a rebuilding year for Kentucky, and I think they're going to do well. but I really like Jeff Brom over there at Kentucky, or at Louisville. My apologies. They're expected to probably one of the top 3 teams in the ACC. I think that Louisville is just too good this year for Kentucky and new head coach Will Stein to beat Louisville. So my prediction for Kentucky in the 2026 season is 5-7. I think you get a win against Youngstown State, South Alabama, Vandy, Mizzou, and I think you get a big win against Florida. Into the regular season, it is a losing season, but I do think you are setting yourself up to get better each and every year. So I'm taking 5-7 for the Kentucky Wildcats in 2026 season. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you agree, disagree, but that's what I got. Other than that, over and out.